In this video I'm going to take a look at how I make washers when I need them. I do buy washers, buy engineered washers, like these ones. So I do get them. It just depends on what the customer wants, to be honest. It's not much of a saving, but it is one way of saving time and materials if you buy washers as opposed to make them like this. Now I make them on a piece of lead. It's the first tool I use, but you can use a bit of wood. And what you do is you use the you sort of go into the grain rather than along it, and all that means is that's into the grain, so you're going into the work. It's stronger that way than into the grain that way. So you go straight into the end as opposed to running it along the side here. That'll split and chip. It might work. And use hardwood if you've got the choice. Use hardwood, it will last longer. So next tool I use is offcuts and scraps of steel, side cuttings and things where I've done stuff. So that's what it tends to look like. I've got a bucket just over that way filled with scraps and bits and pieces that I use for jobs like this. And you can see I've done a few on this one already. Next, a stamp like this. Now you can buy these sorts of things online or in shops. Very often you find them in DIY shops in a sort of tool roll. You buy a cheap set, to be honest, because the steel tends to be fairly good. All I've done is just ground the end off. Try and catch it before the colour changes. So just grind a bit off, touch it in water, grind a bit off, touch it in water, and you can make the size that you require there. And then I have somewhere, here it is, an old planishing hammer, car body shop hammer I think, which I just tend to use this for, because if you're not paying attention and you're working you can smack your hand, and also it means I've got one hammer in the workshop that I don't care about the face of. Always using that same one. Sometimes if I'm in a rush and you're just getting on, what I'll do, you can see, is I use the sides of hammers, but it doesn't really do them the best of favours, and you can over time loosen the head. So best practice is just get one hammer that becomes that hammer. And they're really straightforward. Really, it's why I've been waffling at the beginning, to try and make them the video a bit more interesting. What you do is you get your bit of material. You can measure the holes out, but I tend to just go for it and then cut them as needed. And just, there we go. And we're through. You can see the through because the little plug you just smacked out is that in lead. That's why I use lead as well, because what it means is when this surface is filled with them and there's too many in there, I can chuck that in my bread tin that I've got and melt it down. The lead is heavier than the steel. Push the steel to the top, skim them off, and you're away. We'll do a couple just to make this worthwhile, and I'll just stow the strip. It doesn't need to be this long, by the way. This is just this long because it is that long. There we go. Got the stout wallops. And I'm going quite slow on this. Normally you'd be trying to knock these out because you don't want to waste your time, but I'll go slow because I can take me time for the video. I'm a bit mad on that one. The holes tend to close up, as you'll see, so I'm doing an 1/8 here, and that's probably closer to 3/16. What you end up with is a curly bit of metal. You can do it on the lead, it makes less noise actually. So touch that back down. Tend to, because it's curved, start it on the horn or a round piece of material like this, so you're not catching your fingers. I'll try it on this, don't normally do this. Tamp them back down. And because it's easier doing this next bit when they're in a line like this rather than as individual washers, I've got a file here that's the size of the rivets. Just give it a quick pass, just takes any burrs out, so you don't have to do this when the work's actually trying to be made. and you've got just a rivet and you can't hold it and all that sort of stuff. So we'll move the lead out of the way. Get a chisel. And chisel in your lines. There we go. And that's how I'll stow them. And I've just run out. What I'll do sometimes, if I've got a couple of good strips of material, I'll just make a line of these. I prefer doing it this way than using the drill if I'm making washers, because what I found is if I've got a strip of this weak material, even if it's a carbon steel, it's quite thin. And your drill goes in, if it doesn't pass into your bits a bit, the drill bit's a bit blunt or something like that, what can happen is it just spins around. I had that a little while ago and it really ripped up my hand. So, you know, and tears were out. So the best way to avoid all of that is just leave it on the strip like that. And I've seen some roves for doors, so there's like giant washers for doors that were made in the medieval period that were shipped like this. The only principal difference was, I mean obviously they're much bigger, but rather than having a cross cut like that, they were cut at an angle like that, and then presumably at the site they just knock off the rove as they require it. So that's what I get that far with. And then because he's the top one, let me just get rid of that bit at the top. Now sometimes I put aluminium down just to protect my anvil. Oh. But it's been borrowed and I can't find it. So just take that off. And you can, if you've got a grinder handy or something like that, you can quickly touch the edge. 1 second. So you can touch the corner. They cut the corners off most of this stuff. Or you can just do it. If you're doing a load of them, I find this quicker. And it doesn't have to be accurate, you know, 45 is best, but like I've done there, if you end up at a bit of a stranger angle, you know, so what, it doesn't matter. It's all good. So that's kind of as I'd leave that, ready to go. And then when it's time to get the rivet, or the rivets, I make a load of them at once for the job. Just check you can still see that. Yeah, we can. I get it in against there, just stops it, well, sometimes stops it from pinging. There we go. Doesn't matter if they don't come off. I think this is blunting a bit. Sometimes they do. And in the aluminium block I've got, you've seen a few times, you can just smack away and you won't hurt the surface of the anvil. What I tend to do if I'm doing any cutting, I keep it at this end of the anvil. If it marks up, I'm not too fussed. So here we go, and the last little bit I do before I use them. Now I've seen the original rivets like this, and they often actually have quite a splay on them. They come off where that's just like a few mil. They're quite a size with the small hole in the middle. I don't know what that was about, but these are going into the articulation of a gauntlet, so I don't have the luxury of the space. But often I've seen in originals they're just left like that, and you can see that they're very sharp, but they just didn't seem bothered. I don't know what the story was behind that. Sometimes you can see they've used cutters, which doesn't give you this sharp edge. I haven't used cutters on this because the only cutters I've got to hand at the moment leave serrated teeth marks in the rivet, and that to me just ruins it instantly. You just see those serrated edges and you know full well that the cut was made with a modern tool. So just work your way around, just give it do your nails while you're here. It just takes those edges off. When you're doing 20 or 30 of these, you know, getting done in an hour, it's not the most cost effective, but you know, some customers, they want things to have an original look, even on the inside. They don't want to see engineered rivets and so on. So you need to be able to supply this sort of thing, I suppose, or buy them from someone like me who does them. But there you go, a little 1/8 rivet. All set, ready to go. If you do this and you're like there's probably, oh, I don't know, quarter of a mil, half a mil movement, doesn't matter, to be honest, because if it's being stuck fast and you're riveting it right down, the rivet will swell into the space and hold it secure. And if it's moving, if it's on an articulation or joint, again, it doesn't matter, because that'll probably swell and capture it. But if it's moving a bit, you know, it doesn't matter. It's moving a little bit. That's what you want the joint to do, so it's all good. No need to worry. So I'll get these into the gauntlets, and away we go, because I think I only need a couple left. So quite straightforward to make your own rivets, if you can't get them, for whatever reason. We want to give your work a professional, not professional, sorry, a medieval look on the inside as well.